The New England Patriots finished the 2024 season with a 4-13 record and missed the playoffs for the fourth time in the last 5 years. Aside from a surprising Week 1 win over Cincinnati, it was a very disappointing year for several reasons. They had a perfect recipe for a bad season, as they had several injuries, bad play calling, and poor offensive line play. And throw in the fact they had a rookie quarterback go out there with a makeshift offensive line more often than not, and at times, the 2024 season couldn't have ended soon enough. The Patriots entered the 2025 offseason knowing they had a lot of holes on the roster, and fortunately for the Patriots, they also had a lot of money to spend. And now that most of the offseason is over, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, the Patriots are one of, if not the most improved team in the NFL from 2024 to 2025. They had a tremendous draft class, they did a really good job overall in free agency by improving the roster, and I think it's more than fair to say, the worst days for this franchise are in the rearview mirror. But the only question is, how far can they go this year? Can they go from winning just 4 games in 2024 to winning 9 or 10 games and making the playoffs in Drake May's second season? Well, we're going to break everything down with the 2025 Patriots in today's video. And there's a lot to break down, and if you could like the video before we start, I would really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what the Patriots did in free agency, both in terms of who they brought in and guys they lost in free agency. And the Patriots actually had the highest single free agent signing of any team this offseason, as they brought in Milton Williams from the Eagles on a 4-year, $104 million contract. That's obviously a lot of money, but what matters within NFL contracts, of course, is the guarantees, and the Patriots have an out within the contract after the 2026 season if this does not work out, meaning at worst it's a 2-year contract. And while I do think the Patriots slightly overpaid for not just Milton Williams, but for Stefon Diggs too, the biggest thing this franchise needed this offseason, as simple as this is, was more talent in the building. And when a team has a quarterback on a rookie contract like the Patriots do, and you can even say left tackle too with Will Campbell, premium positions at a discount, I don't think overpaying a few players is the end of the world, especially when they're going to help win games. They also brought in Carlton Davis, who spent the 2024 season with the Lions, and this gives the Patriots a really good corner duo in Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez. They definitely overpaid for Harold Landry, and I thought the Patriots had a tremendous offseason, both from a free agency standpoint and especially from an NFL draft standpoint, but the Landry signing was one move I really disliked from a value standpoint. Now, again, it's not going to cripple them, and they're not going to be able to pay Christian Gonzalez because of the Landry signing, but it was more of a why are we doing this than anything. The Patriots' offense was brutal to watch in 2024, and in a lot of ways, Drake May was set up to fail, and New England had to do something this offseason to improve the unit, which they did by bringing in Garrett Bradbury and Morgan Moses in free agency. Bradbury is not a good player, meaning top 7 or 8 at his position, and I promise there was a reason he was released by the Vikings, and it wasn't just due to money, but again, he is an upgrade from what they previously had, which is what this offseason was about. This offseason for New England wasn't about going from 4-13 with a top 5 pick to an AFC Championship game in Arrowhead in one offseason. No, it was about raising the floor from where they previously were, which was a very bad and very dysfunctional team, and you saw that week in and week out in 2024. Morgan Moses is 34 years old, and obviously he should not be viewed as a long-term plan at right tackle, but he is a guy who can come in and play at a solid level and not be a complete liability, and certainly not allow 49 pressures and 9 sacks while committing 11 penalties the way DeMontre Jacobs did last year. We did a video not too long ago on the most improved teams from 2024 to 2025, and the Patriots were one of them because of the 2025 draft class and supplementing through free agency the way they did. We will discuss Stefon Diggs more during the offensive portion of the video, but truly is giving a 6-time 1,000-yard receiver a contract that the team can opt out of after 1 year a bad deal. You can argue it's a little overpaid, but is it a bad deal? And especially when the leading receivers last year were guys like Hunter Henry, Pop Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, and Austin Hooper. And the bottom line is, no, it was not a bad deal. And that was why I liked everything the Patriots did in free agency, really outside of the value on Harold Landry. And it was because they raised the floor of this roster. Now, the defense should be a substantially upgraded unit in 2025 from where they were in 2024, and I know there's been a belief that at times Gerard Mayo was the scapegoat, but he wasn't a good coach and his team certainly wasn't good either. This defense finished 30th in DVOA last year and was 29th in EPA. They couldn't force turnovers, and outside of a game against the Bengals and a game against the Bears, and you can even say the Week 18 game against the Bills backups, this was not a good unit. But I do have hopes for the Patriots defense in 2025 for a few reasons. Like we said during the free agency part, they upgraded the team significantly. Robert Spillane was a player we did not mention during free agency, but this is a player I like a lot and will certainly be a player who helps out with the run defense. And having a defense up front with guys like Milton Williams, Kyrese Tonga, and a healthy Christian Barmore, along with a really good run defending linebacker in Robert Spillane, well, this defense is going to be a lot better than what they were last year. Christian Barmore only played in 4 games last year due to blood clots, but he's been an underrated player for the majority of his career, and him being out last year obviously didn't help things for the Patriots defensively. However, more importantly, of course, we are glad he's okay as a human being. But having Barmore and Milton Williams be able to both get after the quarterback from the interior is going to be huge, as well as Keon White, who led the team in pressures last year with 45. We briefly discussed their secondary with Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, but this should also be a much improved unit from where they were last year. Jabril Peppers has been a good player for the Patriots when healthy, and if this unit can stay healthy, maybe this is a hot take, but I don't think it's unreasonable for the Patriots to have a top 10 or 12 defense in 2025. One thing that's also not discussed a whole lot about the 2024 Patriots is they only forced 12 turnovers in 17 games, which ranked 30th in the NFL. And when you can't score offensively because your offense was terrible from a personnel standpoint and you can't create turnovers, well, you're going to be behind the 8 ball from the start, which they certainly were. And there's times in football where, as simple as this is, it can come down to who is the bigger and stronger team. And the Patriots' defensive front is not loaded or top 2 or 3 in the NFL, but they are a very respectable unit, and one that you can't take for granted the way you could last year. And then you throw in the fact the AFC East outside of Buffalo isn't good, meaning there could be 4 division wins there for New England, along with playing a 4th place schedule from last year. Well, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this team wins 8 to 10 games in 2025. This next part is, of course, barring injury, but Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, and Keon White getting after the quarterback, as well as 5th-round rookie Braden Swinson, who I am very high on, is a solid quartet of pass rushers. And the Patriots have a really good corner duo, certainly one of the better corner duos in the league in Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis too. Now, I do have some questions about the depth at corner if one of those guys go down, but that can apply to not just the Patriots, but really every NFL team. But from where this team was entering 2024 to where they are now entering 2025, well, they are a much improved unit, and I think this team will go from one of the worst defenses in terms of EPA and DVOA to certainly in the upper half of the NFL, if not into the top 10 or 12 units this year. I thought the New England Patriots absolutely killed it in the 2025 draft, and they were one of just 3 teams that I gave an A+ draft grade to. The other 2, if you were wondering, were the Seattle Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers. They started it off by drafting Will Campbell, and I thought Will Campbell was a really solid prospect. Admittedly, I did have some concerns with the arm length and how he will play at left tackle. I thought he would be a Pro Bowl guard if they kick him inside, but I do think at minimum he will be a solid tackle for the Patriots for years to come. I did like TreVeyon Henderson, the running back from Ohio State, quite a bit, and one of my favorite things about TreVeyon Henderson as a running back prospect was he is not afraid to stick his nose in and to really go out there for his quarterback, and that was one of his positives from his tape, was his pass blocking ability. I mean, there were times where a linebacker would be shooting through the gap and TreVeyon would come up and absolutely rack him, and I'm not talking stick a shoulder into where he just kind of gets in the way to kind of be a bowling pin for a bowling ball coming through. I'm talking car crash collision, TreVeyon Henderson is right there, boom, hits him, and absolutely defends his quarterback at the right way that you would want from your running back. So absolutely love that selection. By the way, TreVeyon Henderson is also a really good running back prospect. He's not just some pass protecting back. So I really can't wait to see TreVeyon and Ramondre Stevenson on the field in 2025. Kyle Williams is a good receiving prospect. I know some people really liked Kyle Williams. I had him around player 60 on my big board, so I thought the Patriots received some plus draft value there as they selected him at pick 69, and I think he will be a really nice addition to the offense this year. year. One player that I am particularly excited about for 2026 and that I don't think will have much, if any, rookie impact in 2025 was the interior offensive lineman from Georgia in Jared Wilson. I think there is a real path for Jared Wilson to back up Garrett Bradbury this year, as Bradbury is 30 years old, and for Jared Wilson to eventually take over in 2026. Now, I know a lot of the times as fans, and especially of fans of our favorite teams, that will draft a guy in the 5th or the 6th round at usually corner or along the offensive line, basically depth positions, and say, man, we have this guy coming up, he's going to be good, and that Jared Wilson's going to take over and be the next David Andrews in 2026. I certainly wouldn't expect that from him, but I do like the potential of him to eventually take over and play starting center for the Patriots for at least a year, hopefully longer than that. But one of my favorite draft selections out of any team in the 2025 draft, not just for New England, although in terms of value, this was by far the best value that the Patriots had, was when they selected LSU pass rusher Braden Swinson. I loved Braden Swinson in the draft process. I thought this was a player that was completely overthought the entire time, and I looked at this as a guy who had 60 pressures in the SEC last year, a player that I had in my top 150, and they selected him a player 145, and this was a guy who I couldn't believe made it past day 2, let alone to the early part of the 5th round, in which I thought the Patriots had one of the biggest draft steals in the entire 2025 draft. Now, I did skip over a couple of Patriots draft picks in Craig Woodson and Joshua Farmer to talk about Braden Swinson, but it's because I am really high on Braden Swinson, and I think there is a legitimate chance that he becomes a starter for the Patriots by the end of the 2025 season. I don't think the Patriots' edge rushers on the roster currently are all that great, and I wouldn't be surprised if Braden Swinson comes in, tears it up in training camp in the preseason, and is again a starter by the end of the year that has 4 or 5 sacks as a rookie. For Craig Woodson specifically, I mean this in the absolute best way possible. I don't think he's ever going to fill the stat sheet, but I think he's going to be a guy that can come in, play a good slot corner, do his job, and go home and be a long-time Patriot. I think he has a high floor as a 4th round pick, and I do think, at least based on my board, that the Patriots overdrafted him a little bit, but I really like the landing spot for Craig Woodson, and a lot of the time when you get past pick 100, that's what it's about, is the landing spot with the said team, and I think this was a tremendous landing spot for Craig Woodson going to the New England Patriots. Now, for Joshua Farmer, the defensive lineman from Florida State, I'll be honest, I was not the biggest fan of his tape. I thought he was on the ground far too much for a player that had the considerable hype that he did in the pre-draft process, and every year you see guys get the hype, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Farmer's tape because I didn't think he was that strong at the point of attack, and again, I thought he was on the ground far more often than you would like, but this was a player selected in the 4th round, and my only real gripe with Joshua Farmer as a prospect was that people were consistently putting him in that Omar Norman lot tier who went in the 2nd round, and that people legitimately wanted him to go top 70 or top 75, and the NFL viewed him significantly different. Now, if he comes in and plays a good defensive tackle, really 3 or 4 role, then that would be good for where he was selected, and I hope he can have the type of impact, but I wouldn't expect too much from him or Craig Woodson on the stat sheet for the 2025 Patriots. I'm not a huge fan of forcing undrafted free agent talk just to force UDFA talk, but I think there's 2 Patriots UDFAs that we need to discuss, and it's Efton Chisholm, a receiver from EWU, and Lan Larison, a running back from UC Davis. Chisholm finished his career with over 300 receptions, over 3,500 receiving yards, and over 30 touchdowns, and what has to be remembered about the Patriots receiving corps this year, despite the floor being raised, which we'll discuss in the offensive portion of the video, is the receiving room is still not loaded by any means, and I think there is a path for Chisholm to make the final 53. If I had to give a definitive prediction, I think he'll be a practice squad guy that could absolutely see roster elevation towards the end of the year. The same concept applies with Lan Larison, as he had a tremendous final year at UC Davis and had over 2,000 all-purpose yards. Again, I don't think he will make the final 53, but he's certainly a practice squad guy that if Travion or Ramondre Stevenson go down, Lan Larison could absolutely be elevated to the roster. Overall, the 2025 Patriots draft class was one of my favorite out of any of the 32 teams, and there was a reason that they were one of 3 teams to receive the rare A+ draft grade. The 2025 Patriots offense, to me, has nowhere to go but up because they finished 30th in DVOA last year and 27th in EPA per play, and the reason that I prefer those stats rather than cumulative rankings is because that's more of a narrow generalization of where teams were compared to other NFL teams, and the reason that I kind of prefer these stats versus actual rankings is because you could probably make the argument that the Browns' passing defense last year was locked down because they didn't give up that many yards compared to other teams, but when when you start a combination of Deshaun Watson, Bailey Zappi, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson for most of the 2024 season outside of the Jameis games, well, guess what? You're going to be down a lot, and inevitably, your opponent is not going to throw the football as much against you, so that way the Browns' passing defense looks a lot better than it was from a cumulative ranking standpoint. So the reason we bring up EPA and DVOA is because that shows really how bad New England's offense was last year. Now, I am a firm believer in Drake May. I've been a firm believer in Drake May for well over a year, dating back to his time at UNC, and I do not think that him or any other quarterback in the 2024 Patriots offense was ever going to succeed or maximize their ability with the weaponry that they had around them, both from a receiving standpoint and especially from an offensive line standpoint. There are three big reasons as to why I'm excited for Drake May in the 2025 Patriots offense. The first, of course, is the floor being raised from where it was in 2024 to where we are today, and I hope that the 2025 Patriots offense are not starting guys like Vidarian Lowe, Layden Robinson, and Demontre Jacobs, at least consistently. Now, I do acknowledge that David Andrews went down, and there's really not a lot you can do specifically along the interior offensive line. When you have a really good interior offensive lineman go down, that is kind of a part of the game, and there's nothing you can do. So I don't blame the Patriots for starting an undrafted free agent center against the Jets and having Quinnen Williams wreak havoc against your undrafted free agent center last year, because there wasn't a lot you could do in the first place. However, the second reason that I'm really excited for the 2025 Patriots offense is the coaching staff. Going from Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo as your offensive coordinator and head coach to Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel is a substantial upgrade, and I think we're going to see that early and often. And I really can't wait to see what Josh McDaniels has in his bag after taking a year off, because he was obviously last seen as the Raiders head coach back in 2023. Now, I do think Josh McDaniels is a good offensive coordinator, and I think he is kind of the textbook definition of a good offensive coordinator, but not a good head coach. And we've seen that throughout his career, as he did not have a good tenure back in Denver in the early 2010s, and he most certainly did not have a good tenure with the Raiders a couple of years ago. The third reason as to why I'm excited for the 2025 Patriots is due in large part to their schedule, and we'll dive into the schedule more in a minute, but when you look at the 2025 Patriots offense, from where they were last year and the offensive line that Drake May had in front of him, to where they are this year is a substantial difference. And one thing I do want to be clear, specifically along the offensive line, because again, I don't think Garrett Bradbury, and especially Morgan Moses at 34 years old, are going to be these long-term fixtures for the Patriots that, hey, we can count on these guys throughout the duration of Drake May's rookie contract, but they are one-year stopgap starters that absolutely raise the floor from where they were last year and should play better than what the Patriots had at those positions in 2024. The receivers that Drake May has this year should also be better too. I will be honest, I was really wrong on Jalen Polk, at least in his rookie season. Jalen Polk had a tremendously disappointing rookie season based on where he was drafted. Now, we went into the Jalen Polk and Ladd McConkey trade a couple of weeks ago, and I personally am an advocate for drafting a better prospect at the said position, and I would have preferred the Patriots to draft Ladd McConkey at the time rather than trade back a couple of spots and draft Jalen Polk. But the point is I thought Jalen Polk could have been a high floor player and a guy that could have came in and had 50 or 60 receptions per year and anywhere from 600 to 800 yards per year with a couple of 1,000 yard seasons, and unfortunately that didn't happen, at least not in his rookie year, and the door certainly isn't closed on Jalen Polk, although the outlook for him specifically does not look as bright as it did once upon a time. But they brought in Stephon Diggs and they brought in Kyle Williams through the draft this year, as well as bringing in Will Campbell and Travion Henderson. Those four players are going to upgrade this offense from where they were last year, and that is absolutely huge for a player in Drake May who needs those guys to help progress his development along from where he was last year. Now, for the Patriots schedule in 2025, guys, this schedule is very favorable, all things considered. And when you look at the 2025 Patriots schedule, 3 of their first 4 games are at home, which are against the Raiders, Steelers, and Panthers. And the only road game they have in the first 4 is at the Miami Dolphins. And I do not want to get into the conversation of, hey, guess what? On September 14th, it's going to be 96 degrees with the heat index of 111, and there's no way the Patriots are going to win, especially with the sun going down on the visiting team's sideline. My point is right now, I do think the Patriots roster is better than the Dolphins roster, and I don't think it's unreasonable for this team to start 3-1 or even 4-0 through their first 4 games. Would I put money on it? Personally, no, for them to start 4-0, but I do at least want to acknowledge that it's not entirely out of the realm of possibilities. I do think they will lose in Week 5 to Buffalo, but their ensuing 4 games after at Buffalo in Week 5 are at New Orleans, at Tennessee, versus the Browns, and versus the Falcons, and for those to be your first 9 games, guys, I really only think that truly one of those games are a loss, which is at Buffalo. Again, I wouldn't go on record and say that the Patriots are going to start 8-1, but I don't think it's unreasonable for them to start 6-3, and if you start 6-3, then you only have to go 4-4 the rest of the way to have 10 wins, and at that point you would probably make the playoffs. The Patriots significantly improved their team from 2024 to 2025, and they also have a benefit of not having a difficult schedule this year, where you look at a team like the Giants, and their first 4 games are at Washington, at Dallas, versus the Chiefs, and versus the Chargers, which puts them at a significant disadvantage versus a team like the Patriots, who do not have that difficult of a schedule at the start, or really all throughout the entire 2025 season. The Patriots also benefit by playing the Dolphins and Jets a combined 4 times throughout the year, who, again, hot take here, I do not think are as good as the teams that the Giants have to play 4 times, like the Commanders and the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So from a projection standpoint, I think the New England Patriots are going to be one of the most improved teams across the entire NFL. I think there's a very real chance that Drake May makes his 2nd career Pro Bowl, as for those who may not know, Drake May was a Pro Bowler last year, and that Mike Vrabel wins the Coach of the Year award. I think this team's ceiling is around a wild card round exit, as I still don't think they're going to go into Baltimore, Kansas City, or Buffalo and win with the season on the line, or even Houston for that matter, as that's not a good matchup against the Texans with the Patriots receiving core, specifically against that secondary. But the point is, I think this team will go from around 4 wins to around 10 wins and be a wild card round exit. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as only about 43% of people watching are subscribed. It helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.